the experienced people who may no longer want to work on site can still contribute and train up younger people, which I thought was brilliant timing for this, because that's exactly what I think that we can do with 360s. We've already been talking with the Supply Chain Sustainability School, which is the organization that is part of, or it's funded by CITB, and it provides free training for supply chain members that are below 250 employees, which is the majority of people that are involved in construction. So if we can curate a course around how 360s can help with that, they'll deliver it out for free to the supply chains. And they are funded by all the big construction companies and a lot of the big players. So that's something that if we hook that in with what this lady, Christy McDonald, I think her name is, was saying this morning, then we've got some big opportunities. So, should we get underway?
Yeah, let's get moving.
Yeah, so right, the purpose of this is a follow-on from Barry's masterclass last Friday. What we want to do is then look at having understood what taking 360s, how best to achieve that, to get the best and most cost-effective 360s. What we want to do is then say, how can we apply them? So what's the point? Let's figure out how best to deliver some value from that. So the purpose of this meeting is for us to do a bit of brainstorming based on your own experiences. How could this be applied? Maybe identify some projects that you're aware of that we might be able to apply it on, so that we can then not just have it as a theory or a nice to have, actually apply it for business benefits. As Barry says, how do you phrase it, Barry? Talking about the pain or the problem.
Oh, in the land of the headache, the man with the aspirin is king.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we want to try and achieve. What I was going to do, but one of the big problems I think that I come across is that most people are totally confused about what the difference is between laser scanning, LiDAR, photogrammetry, 360s, and how those then fit in with things. So, for example, a lot of the reason that 360s have been taken all the time now by construction companies, largely to manage quality, so that auditing the quality of the work that's being carried out, so they can evidence that fire stopping, for example, has been put in properly. So that's one of the reasons. The other big reason is so they can use it for cost management. Because 5D BIM, for example, I think seems to have dropped away. That 5D BIM is where the BIM model is used to do cost management. And I think other than in the early stages, people are using the 360s for that. And that seems to be the way we're going. So what we're proposing is that the 360 is 3D. Clearly, it's 3D, and it's a mechanism of enabling people to navigate complex information. But what we want to try and do in today's session and the one tomorrow, is to really get our heads together to say, what are the headaches, and what is the aspirin that we can bring to that. So I'm going to show just some examples of the way in which we're doing it in using on projects, and to sort of get your creative juices working. Now, most of you have seen bits of this before, but I'm not going to apologize for that, because I think we need to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And this is one of the ways that we're thinking of things now. 360 O&M. So O&Ms are notoriously challenging to be able to both check and also to find things. So what we're doing is we're bringing together the fact that there's a range of different files and data sets, often very good information, but it's not connected. So the challenge is, how do you check and do something with that? So what we're doing is using this to bring together the various different sets of information so that it's all machine readable, and therefore we can then integrate information that's coming from various different information sets and applications and make them all connectable. And the connectability back to the 360s becomes really quite important. And the approach that we're taking anyway, this is normal practice, is that you've got a coordinated set of information that's come from BIM models for anything that's been put in the BIM models. Well, I say for anything, but what we're now looking to do is to also capture things like walls. We've been developing methods of capturing walls that isn't normally in COBie, but there's no reason why it shouldn't be. So that's what we're doing. Also, we're recognizing the fact that there's quite a lot of stuff that never goes in a BIM model. So what we're doing is capturing that from, say, technical submittals. But the most important thing is that we can also capture it from 360 photos. So we've got a range of different ways of building up what should be there on a new build project. And therefore it becomes a lot easier to maintain. So the big innovation that we've managed to achieve is that we've got 360 photos that are coming from all sorts of different sources, and that's brilliant. The thing is that they are not intelligent. So by combining them with the asset library, then we've actually got something that adds intelligence to the 360 photographs. Now, because the asset libraries can also be connected into all of the other information that is being collected from lots of different software applications, then it means that we can then turn the 360 photos that have probably been created from a range of different tools, like simple Ricoh Theta or Insta cameras. These are the £400 cameras that Barry was talking about last week. And then there may also be ones that professional surveyors have used, where the 30 or £40,000 LiDAR cameras like the Leica, and also the Navis cameras, which are the ones that go on your shoulders. So, but we're not bothered where those 360s are coming from. That's the important thing. They can come from anywhere, the most cost-effective way of doing it. And the other thing is that there's a whole vast range of different applications now that construction companies are using. And I heard the other day that Viewpoint have now launched one as well. So that's another lozenge that needs to go on there. But the point about this is that all of those are capturing 360 photos already. On a lot of new projects, they are already being collected in one of those 10 or so different platforms. So as long as we can get the 360s from those, which we can, then it means that we've got a mechanism to say what was there before the ceiling was closed out. And by doing that, it means that we can then start to look at some of the things that we've been discussing. So this is just my suggestion as to some of the things, some of the ways in which we can apply those. The FM teams are using the 360s already for doing asset capture. So that's a no-brainer. And the process is now very well established, and it's proven to be 6 to 8 times faster than sending people to the sites. We've also got the means to do validation. So in other words, checking what has actually been provided, or the records, maybe for an existing portfolio of buildings, they say that there's 20,000 assets that need maintaining. And actually, when the FM starts working on them, there's 40,000. So that validation is important. The assessment side of things is one that we're quite excited about at the moment. We've got a big firm of surveyors who have now decided that they're going to apply it to 800 buildings. So this is for doing stock condition surveys and condition surveys. So that's an interesting area. Safety, we've also been exploring that. These are just some prompts that we can discuss later if you agree with them. And then to be able to navigate around an O&M, or indeed to enhance a fire risk assessment, rather than the fire risk assessment simply being a PDF report with information about things that they've found with photographs in them. By adding the 360 on it, it just brings it to life because people can see where that thing is. And obviously, the golden thread. So how that fits into the golden thread. I'm going to pause there for a moment. I've got some practical examples of what that really means, but I wanted to pause and see if anybody's got any comments or observations on that. Pierre, do you want to say?
George and everybody, my one concern in a number of ways is about standardization. And the principle here is almost on a very, very rigid system. And the main reason is that people coming from multiple different backgrounds, multiple different locations in the world, etc., on global projects, the one problem that I've encountered elsewhere was if you weren't absolutely stringent about the standards, is that you get wobbles. And then you end up spending hours tidying up, trying to find and identify stuff. So the one standard, for instance, in all of this, and George, you probably are already doing this, given the fact that we have a GIS location, is that there are certain features of equipment, certain features of the work that's being delivered and how it should be structured. Not saying what the form looks like, but basically the data that's going to go in. The more standard that is, it will lead to a far better engagement, in my opinion.
I absolutely agree, and we're on exactly the same page, Pierre. I think you know what we're doing. We've already got quite a lot of standardization in the product library that or the asset library that we've already got, and we've got about 3,500 asset types in there that are already classified against Uniclass, IFC, and NRM. Okay, so that's already the case. Paul, do you want to say something now?
Yeah, I think just following up what Pierre was saying, I mean, just the metadata associated with the 360s. So we talked about things like, the locations and things like this. But having a standard set of metadata that means you can geospatially locate all of those 360s, the naming, that they belong to a particular building, that can, we know a lot of the systems out there just use a PDF and then pin a location, a generic location on there, but somehow sorting naming out so we recognize the spatial, the level. Sometimes it deals with the XY, but it doesn't deal with the Z, so you don't know what floor things are on and stuff like this. So I think looking at what metadata is available on the 360s and then standardizing how these things should be done, I think would be crucial for dealing with the massive stuff as it's generated.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, the other thing is that there's works going on at the moment between.
So who's the empowered number 2?
Sorry, could you mute? So somebody's talking. Yeah, and in the background. So there's work going on at the moment, Pierre, with Rick's SIBSI and the like to come up with a standard data set that should all be hanging together. Well, we'll see. I've been told about it. We've not yet seen what that is, but that's where we're going. And obviously, there's things like the classification will depend on the purpose.
George, just to come in here, one of the observations is obviously O&Ms. An example is in the UAE, one of the buildings, the Mall of Emirates, had a leakage problem with the ski ramp, and all of the O&Ms and the digital data and everything was in a room underneath the ski ramp, and basically it was papier mâché. Simply because at the time that was done, the original documents. So massive knock-on. I do think, and these are some of the features that I think need to come in. If I look at ACC, BIM 360, and the issue tool, is that, like Paul had just said there, the containers where all these things are relevant, spatial containers, room spaces, the building, where it's located, etc., is absolutely stringent, because when you select an issue in 360, you can immediately send it off to Barry or yourself, and it immediately connects you to the data. There is no latency. In fact, the biggest latency I've ever had was 16 seconds to actually get to where the problem was or the issues being raised. And that's the kind of target of a benchmark that would be absolutely critical, because then you can go back and say, it takes you 16 seconds. This is the cost. If you didn't do that, that's the cost. Manpower, time, etc.
I think these points that you're raising are absolutely critical to the whole 360 ethos. What I call findability. 25% of any knowledge management company's time is spent looking for information. So the issue with 360 imagery is actually taking the photographs is the easiest part. The more interesting part for me, in some ways, is this getting findability. How do we locate these 360s in space? Now we can do it externally very easily, but internally it's a bit of a pain. If I'm taking 1,000 photographs like I did of a data center last week or a couple of weeks ago, where are all these photographs taken? So what I've done is I've always developed a naming structure alongside the client that is aligned, either if they've got space allocations to do that, because it's the naming of the 360 so you can find them. There are 3 things in any image that you need to know about. One is, where was it taken? In the building, which part of the building room, which room is it which wall is it facing? The other thing is, when was it taken? When was it taken? Because one of the things that this is used for is to look and monitor at changes, whether that's remedial work before and after, or whether it's deterioration and dilapidation over 10 years, whatever it might be. But the other one, and it's probably the most important, is what was it a photograph of? And this is where the whole meta tagging structure comes in. And this is actually where it fits in really well with what George's and NEP do. And there are other flavors out there, of course, who do similar sort of things. But the three things we need to look at with photography is where was it taken? When was it taken? And what is it a photograph of? So what you're saying, Pierre, and what you were saying, Paul, is absolutely right. It's about having a straightforward taxonomy tagging structure that can be applied to the image itself, as well as to any external data requirement, or like George's system does. So I mean, that's one of the things that I've been working over the last 15-20 years doing this, and I've come up with, there's every industry has its own way of doing things. The interesting thing is, so the oil and gas and the nuclear industry, where I've been spending most of my time, I've solved a lot of these problems that the construction industry is dealing with. So sometimes it's we don't need to look internally at solutions. It's already been solved by the nuclear industry and by oil and gas, where you've got SQL, what we call, so we've got CAD related to databases. So if we want to change something, we can just have one instance and change it. So there's an awful lot of things that hopefully we can bring to the party that have been done and solved in other areas that the AEC sector is now coming to grips with. Anyway,
Okay.
that's my 4 pound. But looking at those brown applications that he's got on that slide, George has got on that slide, 360 capture, I could think of another 20 applications. Yeah. I mean, I've just got off a phone call where we're looking at 360 imagery to be looking to help manage disability access to buildings. I mean, it's just a brilliant way that allows the building owner and the person who's disabled to use the same common data set. And break down the silo, because that's one of the things that sort of, I think, we're looking at it from a BIM point of view, and for new build, but also the vast majority is old stock.
Yeah, I think that's a really important
really
point.
why the 360 thing is, it bridges the gap between Revit, ArchiCAD, whatever we're using, facilities management, and the actual user of the building. And that's the reason I'm passionate about 360s, but you get that anyway from what I say. So.
Okay, has anybody else got any observations, or before I move on?
George, just one quick thing, if I can just pop in here. So the Madison Square Gardens, Las Vegas Sphere, one of the issues, and Barry, this comes to, we've got this pile of data, we've got graphics, and one of the things was their health and safety requirements were being managed with facial biometric recognition. In other words, it's just another form of data. But what it was, a person who isn't supposed to be in the welding area, immediately the data identified it and said to Barry, John is in the welding area, please sort it out. And essentially, we've got added value in many, many different areas. And I think that's actually, for me, quite important to be able to identify the potential for that, and then let it get taken away and run like the Navis system. Suddenly, somebody can actually provide certain things, and exactly this, the standardization, the opportunities that there are, and they could then be quantified and made a business case of it. Because, as you know, we've got a healthy H&S system in the UK, which is the tail wagging the dog in many different cases. However, thank you.
I think that's a good point. Any other observations before I move on?
Yeah, I was just going to mention basically what Barry said. Really, it's absolutely vitally important with the new residential PEEPs regulations dropping at some point very soon, which should have been laid before Parliament last month. This is an absolutely amazing way of being able to see what is appropriate for people, wheelchair users, for example. You know, are the doors wide enough? Are there assets in the way of people being able to maneuver around the building, which is fantastic. But also from a training opportunity, you know, there are plenty of housing officers that really still don't understand the Building Safety Act, and they don't understand the ramifications of, you know, having things in certain places, etc., etc. So being able to show people a visual and walk people around a building and say, can you spot what's wrong here? Can you see what's right here? Can you see how we can improve here? It gives us a massive training opportunity to be able to do that. So I'm glad you mentioned about what you saw in the news this morning, George. That was really good.
Yeah, the interesting thing, Nikki, is that I was also talking to somebody that ran the. We've done a project recently with the Westminster Council, and the project manager that was running that is a third party. He said that when he saw what we're now doing with this, we didn't use that much 360 on that particular one, but we're now revisiting that. And he said this would be an amazing training tool for social value. You know, in other words, being able to engage residents or, you know, the local people, young people, to be able to make that a training exercise. And he was suggesting that we should be looking at talking right at the moment. We're talking to the building safety people and the asset management people within the councils, but he was saying that we should really also be talking to would it be resident engagement, do you think, there?
Yeah, absolutely. That resident engagement, because you're heightening that awareness of, you know, what to look out for, because ultimately the residents don't know, and 90% of the time when you get a complaint or a any sort of inquiry from a resident, actually it doesn't fall within the remit of building safety anyway, you know,
No.
because it will go off to a housing manager. It'll be, I don't know, there's rubbish left in this particular place, or you know, I'm aware that someone's been smoking constantly and setting off the fire alarm, etc., etc. You know, and actually they're educational pieces. But if you can walk people around the building and say, well, yes, no, this is not appropriate in this area, and this is why, and this is not appropriate in areas, this is why. But you can also look for things to look out for in the form of, you know, structural. Everyone focuses so much on building safety with regards to fire safety, and they don't really still incorporate enough of that structural safety element of it. So it's so important to be able to obviously engage with the residents, and it's all about making them feel safe. How can you make them feel safe without them having a visual of their building and what
I
is?
like
So
that.
yes, you can walk around, don't get me wrong, you can walk around with them, but realistically speaking, you're not going to necessarily capture the 100% of the audience when you're walking around with people, because you're going to miss people out at work, or you're going to miss people with children, or you're going to miss this, you're going to miss that. If you can run a series of online events, because people are much more inclined, and there's statistics that say people are much more inclined to join online events because they can sit in the comfort of their own home. It doesn't matter if the children are in the front room playing, or they can take their phone around with them whilst they're cooking dinner or whatever it is, and actually then show them their building from the comfort of their sofa. They're more inclined to do that.
Brilliant. Okay, so I've got a couple of examples of things that we're working through. We've as Active Plan, we've been working with Tower Hamlets for the last couple of years, and we're Ridge and Partners are doing the surveys, doing the scanning, and then they're coming into Active Plan. But this is the sort of methodology. Most of you will have seen this before, but this is a Navis camera. So this is the sort of LiDAR that's also capturing the 360s at the same time. And what that means is that we're able to create the spaces that then the 360s go into. So I'm just showing this as an example, because here we've got the 360s, and then we've got here on the right hand side, it's going back into a standardized library that's all pre-classified to Uniclass. And then when you then can see something in the 360, you can simply tag it, and that writes it to the database. So that becomes an auditable set of information and can feed into the safety case and the like. Here's another quick example of that also is showing where the compartment walls are, so that this is another one from Tower Hamlets. So in this particular case, you can see where the safety critical assets are, the lifts and also the bin stores where the big threats are, and the team can then go and say, we can see a lift there, and that can be then tagged. So as a result of that, so this is where the standard libraries are really important, because it means that they're all pre-classified. And then if you're then looking for something, you can then just go to a schedule. I think that's really what Pierre was just saying there. Just by pressing that, it remembers where that particular thing is in the 360. So that's navigating to that automatically. This is showing how, in fact, actually, I'm going to go back. This one is showing how that can be done to check the information that's in the secure information box. So this was an example that Paul Womack identified, where the secure information box, the girder information in here, there was no that looks a solid wall, but actually it's not a solid wall. So this becomes pretty dangerous for the fire brigade. And this is again just being able to go around identifying what's in there. So we're using the 360s as a way of navigating the asset data and then verifying that. So being able to identify where those assets are, and a team of people can do this. That's the important thing. You can have somebody that's maybe identifying where the dry risers are. Somebody else who's an electrical expert can look at the electrical stuff. And this one here is showing how condition surveys can be done. So you can have a template there against that door that you can then, if the information has been captured in an application like RiskBase or Plan Radar, then you're able then to do that condition assessment, but do it remotely rather than having to go to site. And this is, potentially, if this works the way we're expecting it to, is going to be quite a game changer. And this one here is just showing verification. This is tying back to the this is where information's been captured in open space. So this is the open space model, which is also showing what it was, or the 360 photograph before that ceiling went up. And here it's then allowing you to validate what's been handed over against a schedule. So these are just practical ways. So this is 360 validate rather than 360 capture. So we've got a few projects that we're working on at the moment that we can start to introduce people to. This is Watney Market, which Barry's just starting at the moment for us, and this is a market in central in Tower Hamlets, and that's an interesting one that I think I'd like Barry to just explain the process that we're following there. But okay. If you've got any other if anybody here, any councils or are actually doing this same sort of thing, then there's a way that we can work together. So carry on, Barry.
Okay, so this is just to the left of that block of flats. Can you scroll over, move it slightly to your right then? Oh, it's okay. It's on the video anyway. Okay, just to the left of that block of flats, you can see there's a market. Now, this is a real challenge in terms of mixed use, because what you've got is a massive car park with lots of storage for the market. Then you've got a market with retail space, and on top of that, you've got 4 or 5 levels of flats. So you've got, in worst case scenario, it's an awful. Whoever thought of putting a block of flats on top of a tinder box of a market? Well, anyway, that's something else. The issue here is, of course, they have to do all the fire safety evaluations and things like that, but we want to expand it so it's not just going to be used for that. So what we are doing here is we are doing a drone survey to get the external 3D model and the data. We're getting internal scans, so because the drawings need to be validated, and then we're doing 360. And the sort of innovation that we're applying to this is to use what we call single point targets. So by mounting targets on the wall and the floor, we can go back at later say and tie everything in to give it to get the camera positions in 3 dimensions down to a couple of centimeters. So we can go and compare like with like, and all the photographer has to do is just photograph one of the targets that will be on a wall or a door or on the floor, and there's a common central connection. So you can go and mix everything, and if you see changes, there's all sorts of interesting things we're doing. It's a mixture of different types of applications of data capture, but I think the thing that we're really interested in is how we're going to be applied to 360 imagery. So we can, I hate the word democratization, but basically it's to put simple tools in the hand of someone who doesn't need that much training. The beauty of 360 is, and we just saw the Navis system. Well, that's great. That's £80,000 worth of kit, but you could do this for £500 and a little bit of training. So we're going to be using this as an example, and what George and I, or George thought of this is George's idea, is to open the progress of this live project up to everybody so they can see how things progress. So what I'm planning to do is actually use a new system called Sorvo, actually, which allows you online to look and follow the progress of everything we're doing. To look at how we build the models, how we use the 360s, how we use the CAD models, how we do the line work, and how we bring all this together to convert something where there's hardly any information to something where there's more information than you possibly want to know. But also to apply this, because one of the things is, it's once you've got a 360 tour, think of it like Google Street View on steroids or cocaine. You can repurpose that tour for all sorts of different audiences. So it may well be that the estates management and the valuation people want this 360 model so they can look at valuation of their properties for rateable values and things. It may well be that somebody who's disabled may want to be visiting that and want to have a look and see where's the bus stop, where's the tube station, how do they get from A to B. So the idea really is to use a common platform where we can share all these different levels. Think of it like a CAD model where you've got a layer that's appropriate to HVAC. Okay, well, it might be something to do with emergency or personal evacuation plans or whatever it might be. But to have this in a common format based around the 360 imagery. So the idea over the next probably 6 months while we're doing this is to build this up, and also to provide it as access to anybody, to the community at large who wants to understand 360 and how that can impact all sorts of asset management. Now, asset management could be, asset management could be a zillion different things, but the idea really is to use this as a template, and for people to, if they want to get subject matter experts to use this to populate and try and make it into a collaborative tool, as well as obviously we've got to deliver something to the client at the end of the day. So that's one thing, but we will try to make this available to all the community to see if they can, what they can use it for.
George, do you think it's worth at this stage asking people if they've actually, what issues they're facing at the moment on their own live projects that they think maybe 360 could help, or ask you and Barry whether it could help?
I think that's a good idea. Thank you, Richard.
Can I just to finish off one point, that the key thing with 360 isn't actually taking the photograph, it's what you do with the data later on. And if you think about what you're doing with the data later on, that can help solve a lot of problems. So yeah, I'm not sure I'm making that clear. I'll give you an example of where it's worked. So can I share this one I've done, George?
Please, yeah, carry on, please.
Okay, can you guys see a plant room?
Yep, got it.
Yeah, okay. There are 3 issues to do with 360 that we need to that people struggle with. There's lots of people got 360 cameras stuck in a drawer, and they tried it, and sometimes they didn't think it would work for them, or they don't know how to share the information, or they don't know what's in it. We've been doing a data center. I just wanted to show you that some of the issues that we've managed to resolve as well, which might inform some of the problems. So this is a plant room in a data center. Okay, and I can, and this is a website, by the way. So I'm looking at this live, so anyone can look at this. I'm happy to send a link through if you want, so you can play about with this image and do what you like with it. But the level of detail, so there are 2 challenges in this. The first one is up here. This is all in shadow, or it was until I fixed it. So we can actually see the detail that's in the dark. Okay. But the other thing as well is there are 360 cameras and there are 360 cameras. In some cases, you may want, a basic 360 camera is going to be fine. But in this case, we want to use this for doing asset management. And so what I can do here, well, I might make you all a bit sick, but we've got some simple controls down here to help us navigate around. And we can view this, and that's great. But there's 1,000 different people who may want to use this, from asset inspection for asset registers to the maintenance guy who wants to turn up and see whether he's got a room to put his scaffold in. The beauty of putting it on a website is, of course, anybody can view it. But I just wanted to show you sort of the level of detail that we can get as well in terms of asset inspection. So I'll just zoom in here because I saw this the other day, and I just thought, oh, that's quite interesting. So if you pick the right camera, this is the sort of detail that you can get out of this, which means it's not only are you looking at shapes and pieces of kit, you can actually read things. There's an interesting thing here I'll show you. So this is the old schematic drawing. Now, obviously, you can so that's sort of the level of detail that you can get out of these 360s. Of course, you don't have to get this level of detail, but one of the issues people have is sometimes they're sold, sometimes they're sold things. What have I done here? Sometimes, I'll stop sharing now, but sometimes they're sold cameras and things that won't actually be able to do that. But that's the level of detail that you can get if you want to. So that might open up another set of applications. That's why I wanted to show it you. We can do 360s in the complete dark. We can do 360s to a level of detail where you're able to read writing from 10 meters away on labels, which is great. My partner is a retired valuation surveyor. And what she was saying is that there's another application in valuation for all councils or HMRC or whoever needs to do valuation of buildings. One of their big problems is a surveyor goes in and they don't know what that cabinet is. They don't know what that piece of kit is. The beauty of this sort of system is they can zoom in and see the label of the manufacturer and then look at costs and things like that. So it's like this is the ultimate in remote inspection collaboration tool.
Okay. Yeah, so let's hand back to the
sure.
team.
I just wanted to show that
No,
360, yeah, there's another level of stuff. So has anybody got any particular applications or ideas that they think we could do?
Karen, we were talking about something the other day, weren't we? So you've got people that are already doing scans and laser scans and producing stuff. So they're doing that for what purpose?
They're well for valuation, but also they managed to get the buy-in from the developer, so that as the project, well, the development progresses, because it's a 30-story building, every 2 weeks from, I say, when they came out of the ground as when they signed up for it, that the team go in and do a full scan of the development as it's progressing, and then it just gets layered up. Excellent. On the platform. So yeah, it's good to get a developer to buy into that at such an early stage.
Thomas McDougall, where are you from, Thomas? Sorry, can I hear you?
Tom's part of our scanning team, George.
Oh, right. Okay, cool. There's one of the AHR guys. Good.
Yep.
Oh, I think the next work, yeah.
Okay.
He needs a new microphone, obviously.
Has anybody else got any suggestions of projects that they might want to try this on and apply?
So George, just very quickly, an interesting part in my world would be we need to look at the added value in all cases, and some of it can actually be monetized. So Barry, the better the quality of the documents that you're turning out could in fact be shared, and this sounds very engaged, but the local council would get a benefit. Every single one of these, if we identified them as a party that could potentially get information out, the layering of what I call the rose-tinted glasses means that everybody can see what they need to see, and the data then overlaid in that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay,
sorry, otherwise I'll take over.
No, just that you raise a very interesting point, Pierre, about what you can do with 360s. Now, we're talking about building inspection, but there's a really interesting application that I'm going to have to kill you all now. I've told you about it. But there's a couple of councils in the UK are using their own commissioned Google Street View 360 imagery. So you can get a 360 image camera, stick it on your car, stick it on your Segway, stick it on your electric bike, stick it on your back, and walk around and take 360 imagery or a tour of something that's not inside. It could be like we're using it for disability access, for example, for mapping steps and things between railway stations and bus routes and whatever. But it's a really interesting application that some councils are using it for. They are getting 360 imagery, but they're using it for property valuation. The client is not, normally these 360 tours are done by the highways department looking for potholes and assets and lamps and vegetation that needs clearing away from signs. There's a couple of councils who are using it for business rate evaluation. And what they're finding is they might commission, say, £100,000 worth of 360 scanning. Okay. But they're raising £1 million of extra revenue by reevaluation business rates, change of usage and things like that. So sometimes it seems like a pretty mundane application, but almost everybody in the AC could use 360 imagery if they start using it slightly and start imagining what they could use it for. But I know which two councils are using it, and they've got a 10-to-1 ROI on investment in 360s because they're able to then reevaluate their business rates, reduce them in some cases. But all they do is they don't scan the whole town. They just scan the high street and the shopping precincts and those sort of things, and it allows them to, legitimately do something that they couldn't do. They'd need an army of reevaluation people to do that. And they're just looking at change of usage.
Can I just ask Abdullah? Abdullah, is there anything in this that you think might be useful on projects that you're involved with? Abdullah? Maybe. Okay, all right, we can pick up on that separately. Okay. Florentina, you've yeah, I know that you've got some ideas on this.
Yes, I've got ideas.
Sorry to put you on.
Yeah. No problem at all. The problem that I've had is health and safety files and storage of information. No client has ever been concerned after they've been given a health and safety file to maintain that and keep it updated. So every time I have a new project started and I'm asking the client, can you please hand over the existing updated health and safety file? It's just with information that is literally never looked at after handing over. And it's useless to me. It's useless to anybody really, because in some cases, the building is really not looking like the handed over information is suggesting. So having an opportunity to manage that and keep that updated through images every time there is an element of maintenance, replacement, that can be updated then and there straight away without somebody necessarily being trained in CAD so that they can produce a drawing. And that will make massive difference in providing accurate pre-construction information, health and safety information to anyone who needs it, whether they're just a maintenance contractor coming to replace, I don't know, some bulbs or repair, do a little bit of stair repair, concrete repairs. That would make a massive difference. The truth is that I haven't seen yet anybody using 360 to capture health and safety information, namely health and safety files. Barry, I haven't seen it. That's the honest truth. I'm handing over files and PDFs and docs and all that through WeTransfer. In some cases, I do that WeTransfer like 3 times because nobody can bother to download what's in the link, and the link expires. So that stays I don't know where.
this is well, it's ironic, not ironic really, but this is how I got into 360 25 years ago. It was for managing health and safety on oil platforms. And we used 360 imagery there to do risk assessment. We used it for attaching videos to show people the evacuation routes, the lifeboats, and all sorts of things. So it has been used for a long time, just not in this sector.
Yeah, and then you think about the building regulations.
So this is the.
Yeah, if you think about, you know, building regulations, and here structural safety, fire safety now are playing a very important role into this. These are the priorities. But think about ventilation and all those MEP systems that, you know, through correct installation, through correct maintenance, can ensure that the buildings can be used safely from an air quality perspective, and all that. And all these, as soon as you get cracks in the walls, or I don't know, something becomes faulty, if you can capture that in a picture when you do the scope of works, so to scoping projects to be accurate and to say, this is where it is, this is what it looks like, this is the problem, can you price for it? It will mean accurate pricing and correct works.
Absolutely. Joe?
Question for you, George. I suspect. Just thinking about this, and obviously the use case for validating the delivered building versus the design is kind of a no-brainer category for me. But have you ever considered starting that process before the construction has started? So we have, kind of full models of the buildings, and I'm just dealing with those models is problematic, because only your BIM users can access them, and they're large files, etc. And I was just wondering whether there's a potential use case to produce 360 renders from the model, and to kind of start the process ahead of time that we can then build upon.
That's an interesting idea, because we could tag those, couldn't we?
Well, the interesting thing is you can do 360s. You don't need a camera to do a 360 image.
Yeah,
you can do it from the model. That's something that's done in the effects business CGI thing. So absolutely, it's doable, and in some cases that's preferable, because you can start off with that and you can say these were. You can look at deviations then, because what you can do as well is you can overlay the actual 360 when it's built against your rendered model. So yes, it's absolutely doable. It's one of those things that some people want to do and some people don't, but absolutely, that's something that we can do straight away.
Have you got a Joe? Have you got a project?
One of the biggest questions that I've got is, I'm sat in an open office space now, and I can see some meeting rooms. So planning out where those photos should be taken is kind of critical, and I'm still not quite sure how best to go about that. So starting the process early, when I can do 3 different options, and I can kind of proof the process before I get to site, will be a good idea.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the key things is when we do the training on 360 is planning the route and then documenting that route, so people do the same route when they come back. So different people can do it and follow the same thing, because gathering the data in the 360s, there are thousands of these things. The hardest part isn't the photograph; it's organizing the data.
Yeah.
And so you are looking at the same room. You're looking at a hospital room, and you don't want to have to open up every image to figure out where it is, because that's just painful. You're going to have to open up the image and view it to see you're outside room 22 on floor 8. So one of the critical things, which is banal and not very sexy, especially when you've got great imagery, is just the process of how you organize that. And that's one of the things that we try and share as much as we can, because it's the best practice of documenting them. There are loads of people who have bought 360 cameras and they're just sat in a desk gathering dust because the photographs weren't good enough quality, but probably more, they didn't have a way of sharing the information and didn't have a way of figuring out what the photograph is. They just didn't understand the way you do it. My mission is to get 360 cameras out undusted.
Okay, Barry, thank you.
Listen, we're really short of time now. In fact, the time's gone. There are people who've been invited who were mistakenly invited for today and for tomorrow, and have accepted both. Now, tomorrow's will be slightly different, because we'll be focusing more on live people's live projects that they're actually working on at the moment. So don't feel that you've seen it all today, because you haven't. There's more to come. That's the first thing. Second thing, Barry, you mentioned about that project being put on a platform, so people can see. When? How do they see? Is it live now? And if so, have you got a link?
No, it's not live now. We're just about to start gathering the data, so we will make an announcement when it is live. So it's probably going to be in a few weeks once we've done our own thing. So it's not live now, but we'll make an announcement, and then people can start viewing it and collaborating with it. But we'll just circulate that. It'll be a couple of weeks.
Excellent. George, any last words?
Yeah, I'd like to just say that we need to have, I think, a follow-up. So what I would like to do is probably on a one-to-one basis with people, just have a chat with them So I'll reach out if I may, if we could have a one-to-one chat. The intention, I think, of this group is to see how we can not just work with the concept, it's how we can actually apply it. And that doesn't need to cost anybody anything. You know, as Barry said, we've now got the data center that's in Halifax. It's a massive site, which is kicking off in October. So we're putting together all the preparatory stuff for it, and then it's going to be developed starting in October. And then, so if you're interested in getting engaged with that, also the Watney Market project, as Barry said, what we want to try and do is if anybody, you know, if any other local authorities or any other people that have got an urban facility, if they're looking to do that type of thing, why not try and do it together so that we can learn from each other? So we'd like that type of thing. So I'll be reaching out to you to arrange a one-to-one, and you know that's I think that's a good thing for us to do, probably the early part of next week. Is that does that make sense to people? Are we in, does anybody disagree with that? Great. Good. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll be in touch. We'll be in touch. Well, George will be in touch on the one-to-ones. Barry will be in touch on the live projects, and the rest of you, I'm sure, will see you at the forum in 2 weeks' time or tomorrow for the second follow-up. Other than that, thank you very much. It's been a great meeting, and see you all soon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Bye bye.
Cheers.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Cheers.